Hi, friends. Welcome to the Full Heart Podcast. I'm so excited you're here, as always. Today, I get to talk to my friend, Nicole, and I am very excited to share her with you and to share her story with you. Thank you so much for being here with me, Nicole.
I'm super excited. Hello, hello.
Oh my gosh. Okay. Yeah, I love it because we've known each other. It's been like 5 years now. I don't even understand time anymore.
Time did a funny thing after 2020, didn't it?
It makes 0 sense. Yes, we are in a time warp, that's for sure. So it's been fun. It's been really fun watching your journey over time and seeing all the growth, and I'm excited to share this whole journey with everybody.
That's taken some crazy turns since 2020.
Yes, yes, we all have for sure. Okay, before we dig into that aspect, as you know, I just like to ask people a little bit about their history, to kinda get to know you a little more and to see, how life has brought you to where you are now. So, can you tell us a little bit about how you grew up and how you got here?
Absolutely. So I'll give you the Cliff Notes version. I grew up in New England in a town called Fall River, Massachusetts, which is a blue collar town. There's a mix, but definitely had an immigrant dad who was young when he came to America. And then my mom was a solid Irish, hardworking woman who worked several jobs. And we definitely had a lot of love in the house and a lot of passion. But given that background, there was, I think financially it was challenging. And so it was something I decided pretty young that I was going to leave and like never come back. I was going to never look back. And I honored that, married someone in the Navy, and I was like, I'm out of here. I had a lot of opportunity and desire to want to do that. But that being said, it's something that shaped a lot, in terms of what I wanted. And they always made me feel loved, that I could do anything, that I was capable of anything. But I also saw two parents that were surviving and
Yeah.
didn't always have the tools that young to know the difference, right? So I saw them struggle, when I'm an adult, and especially after doing all of this work, you can simultaneously honor what the little girl or little boy in you needed and honor
Mhm.
that they did the best that they could, but know that there was definitely a lot of things I would do different. There's a lot of things that I was going to do different. And I've said this to my parents before. I don't see it as doing it differently. In a lot of ways, I see it as standing on their shoulders because they did better than theirs and
Yeah.
continue. And that's how I kind of rectify in my head, how I can wrap my head around how I do it differently. Um,
Mhm.
I think we spoke before, and one of the major things was I needed to learn how to, and I didn't really figure this out until the last 5 years. I wish I had sooner, frankly. Um, but try to be the parent that my kid needs in that moment.
Yeah.
Do they need tough love? Do they need boundaries? Do they need encouragement? Do they need, especially with a few ADHD kids, do they need functional management, right? Like time management, executive functioning, which I also need, and or do they just need someone to listen and let it process? And that was a major one in these last 5 years is I've really focused in the beginning of this learning journey of like wanting to make it all better, to make everybody happy, to make everything okay, to create the life that we lost. But then in retrospect, what they needed was for it to be okay if they didn't.
Yes, I like what you said of, like, being the parent your kid needs, and that's really instead of being the parent you wish you had, which
Yes.
I think a lot of us who are trying to grow and develop and break patterns or whatever, because I just really resonated with that statement because I feel like I would do that a lot, like, "Well, I wish I would have had this kind of parenting, so let me do that." But yeah, your kid might not know that, like, your kid's not you.
And if I did what I set out to do, which was to, be financially secure, give them access to all that stuff, they're not going to need the same thing I needed.
Mhm.
Right? They have an entirely different upbringing than I had. What they need is honestly a little bit of what I had, which is a little bit of testing, a little bit of resilience that needed to be built, right? A little bit of inner strength. I mean, they need something totally different. And frankly, they needed a parent to listen and just ask them what they needed and trust that they weren't,
Mm.
going to ask for more chocolate.
You know what? Sometimes that really
That's
just solves
also
it.
part of
It's
it.
fine.
Yeah. It's also really fine.
Sometimes we
But,
just need chocolate.
sometimes I think it's a natural thing for parents to want to, we all have this thing, and it's part of how beliefs are formed, right? And so okay, this is what I liked about my childhood. Here's what I'm going to create. And then you meet someone, and if you are someone who has children with other people, you then decide together, hopefully. Sometimes we don't
Mhm.
decide at all. We just get into it and just do what we do.
Yeah.
But you're looking for someone who's going to honor, reflect what you're hoping you're going to build together. And they're going to have things in their life that aren't, they're going to leave behind and try to shift and change. But this idea that those things we didn't like didn't somehow shape us, we don't actually truly leave them behind. They still show up in who we are and
Yeah.
in the relationship that we're in.
Well, and okay, like you're saying, the things we didn't like did shape us, but I feel like so many of us just try to heal it as quick as possible or ignore it or just tell it to be quiet or whatever so that we can get to the happy high vibe thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And sometimes the thing that we compensate to fix. So I'll give you an example. As someone who's raised without a lot of money around, I wanted to make sure that that was never an issue. Right. But then that created this work ethic and this desire to be successful that was really around money. Right. And so for me, if all of those things were okay, then I did good, right? But
Mhm.
if I didn't, that meant that I didn't, right? And ultimately, that's not how I stand now. So there were periods of time where I had to understand that, look, here's when it really didn't work. It really didn't work when the drive to be successful was actually hurting my body, when the drive to make it look pretty was not giving me what I needed on a soul and heart level, right? And then I had to really sit with, okay, I have to reshape how I want to use that drive. It's not a bad thing about me. The fact that I was poor wasn't a bad thing about me, right? And then certainly my drive to be successful isn't a bad thing about me until it is. And what I mean by that is until I decide that I want something different in my life. And this is the component that I think a lot of us give away. This environment, this world is so crazy sometimes that we forget that we get to decide the rule book we're playing by, including those beliefs we formed, by the way, even before 0 to 7. I'm going to tell you about a study in a minute that's going to blow your mind. But
Mm.
even before 0 to 7, there are survival mechanisms that are burned into us that are here to help us survive. And some of the things that are best about us are us running away from what we didn't love.
Okay, wait.
Yeah, let that land.
Sometimes some of the things that are best for us with wait,
About
say that
us
again?
that we think are best about us. So I'll give you an example. Being a good person.
Mhm.
If we're not a good person, what does that mean?
That we're a bad person, everybody's gonna hate us,
Yes.
and the world is gonna explode.
Okay. But when being a good person or whatever you think it means that you are a good person, not holding boundaries, giving more of yourself than you have the capacity to, making commitments to things that you really don't want to follow up on, when you do it to that extent, it's the best of you. The fact that you are a loving person, the fact that you want to see people happy and you want to connect, you want to give. However, when you do it to the extent that it takes away from your ability to be happy, healthy, and full, then it's something, then you get to decide, "Oh, I have boundaries and conditions as to what is healthy because here's why." It's not a mask thing either, by the way, it sort of is, but it's if I don't have the capacity to hold what I'm promising, I'm going to show up as less than you deserve. If I haven't so if I have 7 cups of capacity and you give me 1 cup of crap, I can hold it. I've got plenty of space, right? If I filled it up with all kinds of love. But if I haven't done anything and you add 1 drop more than I can handle, now I'm no good to you at all. And so it's not just, it'd be great if we weren't in a state where we had to take our own mask for even 5 seconds just to have capacity for people, but we can actually do work to build capacity to handle more than we even know is coming. But that
Mm,
has to be an operational process, right? So that's just one component of how what's best of you can be the thing that breaks you if you don't live
mhm.
with discernment and constant evolution. What was great for you at 25, frankly, at 48, my body is not able to handle what it could at 25,
Yeah, and
right?
it's not supposed to, like, we're in
No.
a different state of life, so
I can afford to not run around at 500 miles an hour, take a few steps and get the same amount of work done because I have a wisdom that's different.
yes.
So we operate differently, and so this concept that what shaped us always has to be, the old dog new tricks thing. So okay, before we get into old dog new tricks, I want to share with you that study. So it's about epigenetics, but it is
Yes,
major because I love where the woo woo and the science meet. I love when
same.
science shows us and helps us explore things we already know intuitively. So there was a study, and I can give you the link for your listeners if they'd like to look at it. The NIH reported it, and it was from Emerson University, where they studied mice and they stimulated them until they had an adrenaline response, right? So they put them into fight or flight. and then pump cherry blossom smell into the enclosure. And they did this over and over until they had a Pavlovian response. So the mice were scared just from cherry blossom smell. They took those mice and followed their offspring. And as many as 7 to 14 generations later, they still had that fear response.
That is so many generations.
It is. And even if you account for lifespan and our genetics operating differently, even a couple of generations, right? So we already know what happens in gestational, like there's energy and there's hormones and things passing that we absorb what's happening to our mom when we're in the womb. But if you go back a couple more generations, there's things that is passing down. And if you think about it, it's absolutely beautiful, because what's happening is, from a biological level, we are evolutionary. We are teaching our offspring and their offspring how to survive in the world they're about to come into. But unfortunately, when we don't understand that, we may shame ourselves, blame ourselves, not understand it, even though it has nothing to do with anything in our experience. So if something has to process somatically, it doesn't even mean it was yours to carry in the first place.
So with this epigenetics, for example, some of my money stuff, when I really sit with it, it feels older than me. And I'm like I can't, anyway, that's just a thought. It feels older than me. So this
Mhm.
is something where moving through the energy of it would help to release it, even though it's not totally mine, but it feels
Yes.
like mine, but not.
Exactly. And so if you have a desire to expand beyond those money constrictions, and
Mhm.
so here's what happens when you have this genetic information passing on, and then you have a childhood where there are things with your childhood, things with the life around you that solidify or reiterate those same beliefs, it will turn the expression on. So then what happens is you have real world experience to say, yeah, that environment that great grandma told me genetically could exist. Now I have it in a bag of tricks of ways to survive, right? But then if you can work with nervous system through breath and experience, so mind, body, soul connection, and this is what I do with people, to get into a programmable state. So theta brainwave state is the programmable state of mind where you're in 0 to 7, where you are creating beliefs, where you're creating and shaping how you see the world. But the thing is, we go into that programmable state twice a day, every day, as you're falling to sleep and as you're waking up. And we
Mm.
can do that with certain breath techniques and with certain somatic processing. And so as you use them, there's actually 5 somatic channels of awareness. And so your imagination, your sensation, your emotion, your posture, and your voice, like what you hear and what you say. You can process information in all of those places. But sometimes when we have trauma, when we get into a programmable state of fear or in love, which those are the 2 places, the 2 ways you can get into it, you remember those things because you're in a fight or flight state that the brain says, pay attention. The adrenaline's flowing. Everything feels tingly. It's a little bit out of body, right? And the body is getting ready to conserve energy, to run, to do whatever it needs to survive. But it's also remembering the experience to make sure, hello, love, the little cat is walking across your screen for those that are listening. And they always do. Dogs and animals, they always come around when we're talking. But if you can get into that state, now we can't stop what's happened to us when we were young and what we learned to survive. But if we're in a place in our lives where our body, our mind are showing up in a way that we don't feel empowered about, that we want to change, especially if you've already done the mental work and you know that this belief is now false, right? It's not true. I know that it isn't. I've done the work. I maybe even done somatic regulation. I know how to lower my heart rate. I know how to be in a place like you've worked CrossFit. You've already taught your body how to withstand discomfort, right? You know you can handle stuff, girl, right? You know that,
Yeah.
right? Okay. But when you're in an environment that sets your body into the state that you were in when money stuff came around, your body speaks to you to say, hey, this is just like that time. Pay attention. Now, if you can get to a point where you are in a regulated state more often than you're not, when that happens, you will notice and understand what's happening in the body. And that's a moment you can regulate and shift. But this is where it's really important. You don't just calm down. You don't just say, no, I just need to be calm. Like when you're working with anxiety, for example, right? When it doesn't make sense. You also shift the beliefs and thoughts. And then if you are capable, maybe make the decision to take an action that is different than you would. Because ultimately, you're showing the body and the mind and the soul that you have actually grown through it, that you're capable of taking a different route. And it's through that state that you can go from, sitting in front of a mirror, mantra, 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 journal, journal, journal. If your brain's not in a programmable state, it's going to take a lot more repetition to shift and change it. If you
Right.
work on it on an energetic level, you may find things epigenetically or soul level that are lessons, and it's good to know that they're lessons, but you still got to live this life, right? So you need to work on that stuff and acknowledge it, but the combination of these modalities is where you can shift things really fast. If you can
Okay.
think it, believe it, feel it, and act differently, that's when you
Think it,
fully shift. Think it, believe
believe
it. So that's
it,
like really powering
feel
that
it,
emotion,
act.
and then act. So that posture, doing things differently, doing them all in a programmable state enough times, right?
Okay, I wanna go back for just a second because 'cause we're
Sure.
thinking, like, okay, I'm anxious, I'm, like,
Hmm.
sitting here, I'm freaking out, I'm stressed about something. I'm anxious, and so I feel like this is a lot of the time when people reach that anxiety, they either think, "Oh, well, this is telling me that this thing is bad and wrong, so I need to not do this thing."
Hmm.
Or they're saying like, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna shift to high vibe and just ignore it," which we've all been there, so there's no judgment. But I feel like what you're saying is in this time of growth, like, okay, I could choose to say, "This is telling me this is wrong. I'm gonna stop doing this thing." Or sit with the discomfort, sit with the anxiety, listen to what it's telling me, and then change the story and do something different.
Sure.
Is that essentially
So the way that you know the difference, I mean, I think that's what you're asking me. How do you know the difference between my body is speaking to me and telling me, no, get out, right? And the difference is doing the work around what you want first. So you want your nervous system to show up when things are off. It's not always good to
yeah.
just suppress it and say, no, this is fine, do it anyway, right? Like meeting someone new, if you're probably sensing something off energetically with that person, maybe their heart's racing, but they're smiling like it's fine, listen to your intuition. But if a
Mhm.
pattern keeps coming up, like every time you make a decision with money, you back off and you know that you have missed opportunities that would have worked out for you, right? So it's really important to be cognizant of your patterns and how those patterns show up. And it's important to know the difference whether you're looking at a tiger or you're avoiding a phone call, okay?
But they feel the same.
They do feel the same. And so here's what I would say. If you can work on your regulation to the point that you are more normal, more regulated than not regulated, then when your body starts speaking to you, you'll know that it's time to listen. It is really hard to know the difference if you're dysregulated all the time. If you're
True.
holding on every day to what happened throughout that day and not letting it go every night before bed, then you're carrying some of that dysregulation into the next day. If you have something in your childhood that is not in alignment with where you're leaning into right now, or something epigenetically, it will keep showing up as a soul lesson. It'll keep showing up as a lesson that will keep testing you. And until you shift differently, then it will keep showing up. And so the work that I do with people in the longer journeys is tapping into concepts like unleashing your power, speaking your truth, relating to yourself in a loving way, so that you can clear those deep, deep wounds on a high level. And we go deep enough that you're in a programmable state that we're going to work on this on a big level. But you do it with breath and with energy in a cognizant way so that you remember when you're done. So we're not hypnotizing you. This is not something I'm doing to you. I'm essentially creating a safe environment so that you can heal yourself, so that you can walk through it. And here's the cool thing. You're doing this from a place where you're not really threatened, right? You're safe. And so if you can feel anxiousness and titrate out of anxiousness, you can start to believe that you can do it in real life. So you do it in a place that isn't really dangerous, that's actually safe, but you still feel the heart rate shift. And so this is about learning muscle memory and how to. So first, what you're doing is discerning the difference between what's yours and what's not. That's the first part of the process,
That's an
right? That's
important part.
major.
Yeah.
Once you get to a point where you understand what you're carrying that's yours and what you're carrying that's not, then you can start to discern, okay, what do I want to shift? What have I been carrying for generations or for years that I want to shift? Then you intentionally go into this programmable state with that intention. Now you're actually becoming, or frankly, as I say, remembering who the heck you are, right? And what you
Mm,
want. And then this is the part where you say, okay, this is where I've come from. This is where I am today. I've got the blueprint. Here are the holes I want to fill, or here are the things I want to explore and create. Maybe I actually love painting now that I no longer have a perfectionist complex, but maybe I need to explore it with no consequence, with releasing all of those rules and beliefs
mhm.
around it, right? And then you got to play with it and see. And when you do this, when you start living a life where you lean into curiosity, you're going to get
Mhm.
triggered sometimes as you get uncomfortable. And this is the thing that a lot of people don't talk about, especially when it comes to expansion and business. And you're going from letting emotions and dysregulation run you to now empowering your own creativity in your life. But it still feels
Okay.
like you're back at the beginning because
Always.
yes, but here's the secret. You're not. You're leaning into breaking through new ceilings of expansion. And when you do that, that same old pattern will pop up, but it won't have as distinct of a hold on you, but it'll still be there. And what you tell yourself that means everything. Because if you
Okay.
say, this is normal, this is what successful people deal with all the time, I know how to handle this. In the moment I can regulate myself out of this, I already know I want to make a different decision because I've taken the time to architect my life, right?
Mhm.
And so this time, I've also come up with new parameters. For example, someone with ADHD, me, I know I got to work out, I got to get good sleep, and I got to eat well. Otherwise, I don't make decisions. If I'm hungry, I'm tired, I'm frustrated, emotionally overwhelmed, there's no decisions and there's no new beliefs being formed. I
Yeah.
just love myself, period. When I'm in a state of empowerment, when I've done all the things I need to do that I know I can trust my body and my instincts, that's when I make decisions. That's when I have certain parameters. For example, I will do things for free for people. I'm a bit of a people pleaser recovery, and I will do things for free. But I also know that I've set parameters around that. And I have
And
certain
that's
rules that I honor, right? So you've got to get to a point where you've architected who you are so that you can then expand beyond it. So the first
okay.
step is understanding your normal, understanding what's yours and what's not yours,
Mhm.
learning how to play. It's kind of like learning how to ride a bike. When you've been on you've been like the passenger on a two on a two bike for a long time, but now you're taking the wheel, you're taking the pedals. And then you're learning how to regulate speed and how to figure out how you play. How does energy play with you? Maybe you're someone who gets intuitive knowing. Maybe you're someone who gets a gut feeling, right? But people who get gut feelings, sometimes they're also people who take on other people's emotions very easily.
Yes.
Some people who have an incredible insight to intuition will have a million ideas and not know which ones are theirs and which ones are for people to give advice on, right? So you've got to be able to understand, how does energy flow through me? How do I use creative power to expand it, right? And then when you get to
Mhm.
that point, you learn how to ride your bike. As you
Mhm.
learn to ride your bike, then you decide, where do I want to go and how fast do I want to go there?
Ooh.
And this is really important because you get to choose. Like, we look at all of these 10-step programs and breathe for calm, breathe for zen, use this energy practitioner, use this person for their 12-step system that is going to make you $1 million. Well, what if you don't even want $1 million? I mean, honestly,
Okay. Yes. Yeah.
right? Like, you got to want what you want and then find people who have it and then listen to them, and actually listen to them with curiosity, not with, I've got to do what they're telling me to do,
Okay,
right?
I wanna just really sit with the curiosity a little bit more too, because you mentioned that again, and this is something I definitely live my life by, curiosity, not judgment. And so it's really sounds like a lot of in the beginning when you're understanding what's yours, there tends to be a lot of judgment when we're first beginning, like, "What's wrong with me? Why is this happening again? I thought I conquered this." And just getting really mad about these things, but instead, we could say, why is this thing happening again?" And that just shifts the energy. Instead of judging it and getting mad, it's like, "Oh, wait, but look, I'm coming at it like last time I was on level 1 and now I'm on level 3, so it's just helping me expand."
100.
And then I love the play aspect because I feel like that just enhances the curiosity. Like, okay, well, how can I play with this? How can we do this now? And look at the intuition.
Maybe I like how that feels. Maybe I don't like how that feels. I can tell you, as someone who's been poor and really wealthy and someone who has a big house, that I'm seriously reconsidering whether I want a big house. But there's no way in heck I would have ever told you I didn't want a big house until I had it. Because that was the dream I had since I was very little. That meant safety, that meant security. So it's tapping into, what do you
And
want? And what emotion do you think it's going to bring you? And where do you already have that emotion?
yes. Okay. I love that you said that because I know I've heard that and sometimes I would get really annoyed with it. So so that's why I
Yes,
feel
I
like
hear that. I feel that because I've felt that too, but I've had to have the experience myself to know that it's real. And that's
yes.
okay too.
And
That's a
that's
big
what
important thing.
yes, that's what I wanna explore because it's like, you weren't gonna know until you actually accomplished this big house and you had the thing, and now that you're in it and you're living it, you're like, "Wait a second, like, maybe I could use, like, half this space. Maybe we don't need this," or
Yes.
whatever. But you're not gonna
Yeah.
know until you're in it, and that's okay. Like, that's
Yes. Or you could ask curious questions for people who have what you think you want. right? And so
Mhm.
curious questions like, okay, if I were to have $1 million, let's just say, what felt uncomfortable for you to have that? Because I'll tell you, there are some major things that you expand into with having a lot of money or having a lot of friends. Like that's a
Yeah.
perfect example when you look at abundance. If you relate money to friends, people can fully understand that not everybody wants a lot of them.
Yeah.
Some people want a few core people, they can count on it, and beyond that, it's just way too much chaos. The same is true of money. Money is an expansion of who you are. It's resources. And if you have too many resources without putting it to use, there may be a capacity to which you don't need more and you feel comfortable in. And then there are people who have a lot of money and they buy a lot of things and none of it's really valuable, right?
Yeah.
So when you look at it, it's the same thing with friends. And so understanding what you enjoy out of life, and look, I'll be honest, I did so much up until my 40s that what I thought I needed, what I thought would be answers. And I'll tell you, this is kind of like, I genuinely get fulfillment out of watching people be happy, fulfilled, and celebrated. And so that was a part of who I was that was sort of distorted by a lack of self-value, right? And
That's where
so
the people pleasing came in?
absolutely, because I genuinely still now, like, this is how I think about these breathwork and energy sessions that I have. I get to watch people grow, expand, and have new realizations. And it is so similar to watching, like, your kid figure something out for the first time. And we only get so many of those moments for ourselves, right, in life. Like, you can't manufacture that. That is something that comes from overcoming, from expanding into yourself. And so now I get to do that all the time. I get to witness this beautiful thing unfold. And that brings, for me, genuine enjoyment because I do feel people's emotions. I get to feel it vicariously, and it's so cool. Like, it's wondrous. That's why we're here. That's how I feel, why we're here as humans. And so for me, understanding that if I'm doing that to the extent that I'm burnt out, I'm unable to hold the space, I'm unable to show up for them the way they need it to be grounded, then I'm actually not experiencing that in the experience, right? So those parameters around why I enjoy what I enjoy, those are really important. Those
Mhm.
are creating the container for me to have the life I want to have. And the way this plays out in other situations is if I buy everything I ever want right now, but I don't have the money for what I really, really want to accomplish, then I'm not actually setting the boundaries around what's really valuable and fulfilling to me. So it's important to know what are your long-term goals and why. Why? What are you hoping to feel when that happens? So why do I love seeing people be successful? Because then that proves to me that I can be. I love doing hard things and challenging myself because to me, it's important to know that I can. And I'm sure there's a deeper one that there's a coach out there right now or a somatic practitioner or an energy healer is going to say, oh, I see that pattern. She doesn't even see it yet. And I want you to know I'm okay with that. Call me. Me, DM me, because I'm sure there's a next level. But I get so much enjoyment out of seeing people overcome. Like, and
Yeah.
that to me is like such a beautiful thing. Because to me, that's hope. That's creativity.
Yeah.
That's everything that I'm here for. Now, sitting still without movement and stagnation, major downers for me. And it has been a major life work to be okay. Like just sitting still and being. So it's not
Mhm.
surprising that breath work and energy work is a major component for me because it kind of allowed me to actually be okay when I needed to be okay.
It helped
Yeah.
you to sit still, but also be moving.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a co-creation, right?
Mhm.
Every breath, this is how I describe breath. Every inhale, especially the lower diaphragm inhale, is a question. And as you expand that breath into your heart and open, you're receiving. And every exhale is a letting go.
I love that visual.
So you participate with your free will with every inhale, or you can. I mean, obviously it's automatic too, but we are not guaranteed that question. We're not guaranteed another inhale.
Okay, but what question is in the inhale?
For me, it's always why. For someone, and why, because I've always had this endless bound for how does it all come together? How can I shape or change how it comes together?
Mhm.
What else could it be, right? Like that's something that was probably incredibly, actually, I know it was incredibly hard for my mom. Growing up, it was always why. And if I didn't understand it, if I didn't get it, and I mean get it on all levels of me, then I still
Mhm.
wanted more. That's just how I'm driven. It has always been who I
Yeah.
am. And so I am fulfilled by seeing that come to fruition. And I'm even more fulfilled if I can tweak and change it to see like how it changes things. Not because it needs to be fixed. It used to be because it needed to be fixed. Now what's shifted for me is, ooh, what if we add purple? Ooh, what if we add this? Then what happens? Whoa. Right?
Yes, just
It's
exploring the playing, the
yes, the play.
curiosity.
What if we dance this way or that way, and like the giggle and laughter? That to me
Yeah.
is like why we're all here. And if you can take away, like I've had some major heavy stuff happen to me in my life. So I
Yeah,
don't
we
take
haven't
this
even mentioned
lightly.
it.
Yeah, we haven't. And I think it's important to mention though, because I'll tell you right now, if I had listened to this podcast in 2020, I'd want to punch me in the face. Like
Yeah.
truly, I'd want to
Yeah.
punch me right in the face. It's
Yeah.
disgusting how happy I am now. It's absolutely disgusting. And I'm happy to share, after I had some major trauma as a little kid. Without getting too heavy and all the things that you can think of outside of like being hit, right? Like I really wasn't ever like, well, if you don't count my big brother,
Yeah,
it's like
big
it's like
brother.
the roughhouse and stuff. Yeah. That kind of thing. I was definitely a perpetrator in that too. Um, and then my husband passed away unexpectedly in 2020, and it was during COVID, but it wasn't COVID, and it completely rocked everything because he was 3 months from retirement from the military. We were about to buy a house and live happily ever after in Europe with the two kids. They were living in the Netherlands. We were all in the Netherlands at the time. He had 1 year left in America. So we were living apart. And I had to decide whether to move back to the States, which was challenging in that time, within a few weeks' time, and what our life would be like. We were already on a precipice of big change because he was about to retire. But everything that we worked for 15 to 16, so 20 years for him, I met him a few years into his career. Everything you pay your dues in the military so that you can have the life later, right?
Yes,
All of
yeah.
that, just getting through life until it was time to enjoy it. And now it was all, in my perception, obviously not everything, but it felt like it was all gone, that I had to
Yeah.
completely rebuild. I'm blessed that I had my children, but I honestly was at a point in my life where I had done so little to take care of myself. I was 340 pounds. When I looked at myself as the person that was now going to be solely responsible for being what these kids needed and deserved, is how I saw it, I was not the person that was going to be able to do that. And if it wasn't already known by me that leaving this earth wouldn't cause them more pain, that would have felt a lot easier. And I've had those thoughts. But the number one thing, I followed him everywhere. Like he led our life, and he would say that I was his anchor. And I would jokingly say, yeah, and I'll follow you wherever you go. You're our compass, right? Like I had this joke, and you can imagine like unpacking the boxes of 300,000 books for the 30th time, being like, why does he have to keep all these books? Like, right? And being like, oh, I have to move again. Like I hated that process, right? And he'd come over and be like, remember, home is where the anchor is, and you're my anchor. And I would say, meh, 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 meh. Right? And now I lost my compass. So when I was thinking, I distinctly remember being in the shower one day right after I learned he wasn't going to survive. That is, the damage to his brain was too severe from his heart stopping for too long after he fell. My mind kept racing of all the things I had to decide and things I had to do, and like just imagining, how is this going to be okay? Because remember, I want everybody to be happy, right? I want everybody to be happy. And so
Right.
I just remember thinking, I can't do this without him. And I knew whatever you want to say, you need to become someone you'll follow.
Profound.
And it was then that I decided to start to rebuild who I was and build the life. And I met you probably a year or two into that. And I will never forget the moment, because you were so patient and listening to me. And look, I had other people to talk to. I had a therapist, but I had a lot to say. I had a lot to say as usual. And I remember you turning to me once and you said, well, what do you want, Nicole? What do you like? Okay, what do you want then? Because I'd said, this isn't good. That isn't good. This isn't working out. And I had a beautiful house and this beautiful pool and this, all those things were exactly as I prescribed on the little blueprint that I created that I was going to build, that I gave myself 3 years to build, if you remember. And I didn't have an answer. I hadn't done the work of debraiding what he and I had been dreaming building together. What, as a kid, I had to have to feel safe and successful, which I already knew wasn't necessarily what I needed now. And then done the work to say, okay, when I take away what I only liked because it would have been with him, because I would have watched him be happy or whatever the reasons were unconsciously. If I take away the little girl not needing this to feel safe, then what does the Nicole now actually want to create? What's okay? And I'll tell you, it took me 3 years to know it wasn't the house. Well, the house is a reflection of me. And it was more, I want to travel and do more outside of the home I'm in. So from that standpoint. And so, I had to then spend the next couple of years figuring out with curiosity what it is that I actually wanted to build. And at one point I looked back and thought, I don't know if I ever would have taken this deep inventory if there was a safe place for me to crawl back into. But because I
Right.
didn't have that, perceivably, you could say I had plenty to feel safe, right? But my perception was that I didn't. If I could have gone back to somewhere comfortable, I don't know if I would have, but I had to like burn the boats behind me as I jumped into the next one. and not look back. And now I'm in a place where I'm looking back at those boats going, man, they weren't all so bad. I didn't have to hate them so much. Yes, I can choose not to be with them, but I kind of needed to hate who I was to have the courage and the will and the capacity to make the changes I was making. But now that I look back, it's actually been a process of, okay, I can see how I got to there from there. And I can see how I got to there from there. And when you talk about regulation versus like actually processing, that's looking back and saying, okay, I can let that go, not because it's something I can't handle or can't have the capacity I'm running away from, but I can see it for the gift it gave me with gratitude. And I can still take that knowledge forward in my life and know that it doesn't control who I am today.
Yes, and I think that's so beautiful, and I wanna let that really land for a second too, to sit with that, because just like you said, if you were listening to this podcast episode in 2020 or
I
2021,
would have told you to screw
you'd have been like, no, my husband dying is not gonna be
a
a good
gift.
thing. What are you talking about? There's not a gift in this. You're insane."
Yeah.
And
One door
and it's
opens.
yes, I know all the things people say. And it's not and it is a weird thing because we're not trying to be like, "Oh, great, your husband died and it worked out so well."
Of course not. Of course not.
But
Because there's
also
still pain in it too. There's a lot of pain
yeah,
in it still.
for
Yeah, of course.
sure. But like you said, it did propel you forward in this way that wouldn't have happened otherwise. And who knows, maybe that was part of his soul contract to help you get to this
Yeah.
place. Like, we
I
don't
will
know.
be honest with you, that is something I still don't resonate with, only because
Um,
I have a strong inclination that we all have our own journey and that our journeys are not, for me, I don't discount this for
mhm.
anyone else. For me, there was way more to his life than that, right? Now,
Yeah.
that being said, and I can say that truly for him, there was so much that he contributed to this world,
Yeah. Yeah, and
including
I
our
didn't mean to
children.
make it seem
No, no,
like
no.
that was
I
the
just
only
want to,
thing.
I honor everyone's process and how they process things. I have sat with that and asked that question many, many times, many, many
Mm.
times. And there could be an element of it that I don't want to receive that gift,
I mean,
And that's okay.
yeah.
That's okay. Well, I'll approach that as I need to. I think I have to believe that there are many prongs to my life and that
Mhm.
there are choices I can make. Some of them may have impacts to other people's lives that, if they don't have them with me, they'll have them with someone else. So I think it's not entirely a falsehood, but it's also not entirely a truth, like it's not one or the other
Yeah.
for me. I honor I want you to know, one, I've sat within questions like, yeah, I don't know. I don't know, but I also don't need
Yeah.
to know. I don't need to know because there are other ways that could have happened. We could have had troubles in our marriage. We could have had, right? Like
Yeah, there's
yeah,
1,000
sorry.
different
I don't mean to harp on
ways.
it, but
Yeah.
for me, I think it comes back to when we chatted a bit before we got on the call and we talked about things like, when I look at things like astrology or when I look at things into like soul plans or even like things like human design, to me, they are what bring us through the gates into life. And they're, even when you look at your patterns, your somatic patterns, and the way I believe soul speaks to you through your body, right? Those patterns are great roadmaps for where you came from. And there's a really beautiful process in this where you get to acknowledge what shows up and how it shows up without it being a destiny that you don't get to choose how you move forward. And for me, the thing that this work has really emboldened and impassioned for me is for so long, and especially in New England, you hear this thing like, that's just who I am. That's just who I am. I'm not changing for anybody else. Well, no, but if I want to change for me, I can. And my work, more than anything, honors that each person gets to choose their life.
That's beautiful.
And as someone who's a recovering people pleaser, that's not something I always owned for myself. I have elements of me that are how I came into this earth, and I honor them. And I understand that there are aspects of that essence of me that can be challenging. My creative mind can go loose in the world, and I can create any story. I can literally create any story that I want. Any story can be totally true if I let it, right?
True, yeah.
And I had a body that I wasn't connected to. So grounding things was really challenging. It could easily get hyperactive. But those two parts of me are also incredibly creative. They solve problems other people don't see the solutions to, right? And so knowing who you are and your particular flavor of spicy, however that looks, even if you're super bland, there is a beautiful essence that no one else can replace. But
Yes.
every single one of us has parts of that essence that go a little too far sometimes when they are rooted in fear, when they are tired, when they are hungry, when they are little and they don't have empowerment, right? When we're little people, we don't have the empowerment we have as adults. But as we become adults, we come fully formed and whole into this place that we get to choose how much we turn up the spicy and turn down the bland and turn up the curiosity and turn down. We have this. I know I talked about the bus and the helicopter, but even more so, the breath is the window between what is unconscious and conscious. It is the only part of our body that connects and bridges what's automatic and what's consciously driven. And so when we connect heart mind coherence, I would expand into farther and soul heart mind coherence into the body. We then connect all of our creative power in one full channel. And from that space, we get to decide how much of us we are part of the creation and part of what's flowing through us. And that's a big piece of it because our body is not, it's what we use to create and live in this world.
Yes. And it's
And
an
I
important part of our human experience.
100%, but it is the filter that we see everything through, including how we connect to whatever we call spiritual. Whether it's God, whether it's quantum physics, whether it's science, however you look at what you can't understand, we see all of it through the body. And so if it is carrying stuff that is not ours, it's like glasses that are foggy, right? And so it's up to us to manage the body, to take care of it so that it can be as clear as it can be, so that we can get an actual picture of it. That being said, sometimes we need to step out of it for a moment to have perspective,
Yeah.
right? And so the mind is this beautiful thing that allows us this expansive view. From a bird's eye view, we can see what the being in the body can't. And so when I said to you, there's probably coaches and everything that are listening to this that can see my patterns. Look, our emotions tie us to a tree trunk. So we can't see past the tree trunk. And somebody else doesn't have that emotional tie to what we're tied to, right? They have different tigers. They have different bears. And oh my, we are right here with our tigers and bears, whether it's a phone call or an actual bear, right? And so breath can allow you that space between that reaction, that experience, and to be able to pull yourself up and look at it outside of the body, to not be fully immersed in the moment. And so we can come out of the moment and come back into the moment. We can go into spirit. If you have spiritual gifts, breath is a component that can get you access to things you will not have access anywhere else. But it's also this incredible tool to manage the body and all of those systems that are already pre-programmed. And so I'll just leave this last moment. The difference between anxiety and excitement is love and fear.
Yes, that's one of my favorite little things. Someone told me years ago, they're like, anxiety and excitement is literally the same thing. And when you when you think about it, because I'm anxious a lot, and so I remember that and I'm like, oh, it does feel very similar. So you can change the story, and it's true. It's like, oh my gosh, I have to make this phone call, and it's gonna be so scary.
Yes. But if you are
Or
on autopilot and allowing the fear of the world to overtake you in a given day, if your cups are filled with mostly fear, then that tiny little thing that wouldn't have triggered you before is going to be seen through that filter of the fear that you're already in. And
Mhm.
so it's important to not just regulate, but like give yourself a healthy dose of the good stuff too, right? Because you don't know how much is going to come in for you to hold. But I'll tell you this, if you're someone who's leaning into growth, it's important to expand your capacity for what's coming.
Okay. So the expanding the capacity is
Yes.
something I'm very curious about because again, just I'm thinking about the anxiety feeling
Sure.
again.
Sure.
And of course that is attached to fear. But it feels so scary to try to expand in that moment if you are kind of stuck in the fear story, because then it feels like, well, there's just going to be more things to be scared of. You're just inviting more
Absolutely.
tigers in instead of seeing that, no, actually, your tree is growing and you're getting leaves.
I love how you're using I like analogies and they're all coming into one. So you don't expand your capacity in the moment of fear. So there's a time for
Right.
regulation and there's a time for expansion, right? And so when you're in a fear moment, the priority is the tourniquet. The priority is regulation. And so when you hear people talk about regulating the nervous system, they're talking about not letting your day pile up. So for example, this is for example, when my husband first passed, I would cry for 12 hours a day, right?
Well, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And then one day it became 6, and then it became 4, and then it became 3 over time, right? And so part of it is the work that you do to be able to release what needs to be released in the moment. And you had a great guest that talked about how when her dad passed when she was little, she couldn't process it. It was just too much, right? Like there are things that happen that are too much. And your nervous system, when it shuts down, it's doing exactly what it's supposed to do. It's actually creating space because you can't process it all right now. And then over time, as you expand, you can process more. Okay. And so then it will continue. So if you ever notice that things are going great and all of a sudden grief will come over, it's because the body's actually able to process it, right? So as you are okay and able, things will process. You'll notice things that will be able to. And if you tell yourself that things are back to the way they were, then that's like you're kind of missing half the point. Actually, you're only able to process it because you're doing fantastic. I shouldn't say only. It's one of the reasons that you're able to process it.
Yeah.
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 Now, that being said, so if you can come up with, and this is how I say this, if you can come up with a process where you start to take control of this process, it feels more empowering. Okay. So you can look through an area of your life that you'd like to really shift. And it sounds like from this conversation, maybe money might be one of those things, right? Maybe
Yeah.
money in the business, for example. And so if you take a cognitive effort to look at that, you can go through a series of sessions where you explore the different threats to money, the different vibrations that might trigger you around money. And one, you want to release, actively look at, acknowledge, and either in the imagination, in the body, in those channels of awareness, looking for the one that's accessible to you, right? So for some people, the imagination's more accessible. For some people, when they go through a somatic session, they'll feel like they have to actually physically move to process something. It's a little different for each person. Everyone has different access to different somatic channels. As you process that, then you're releasing what's not yours to carry, what's actually not true anymore, what the environment around you isn't showing you anymore. Okay, so like, for example, maybe you, like for me, I always wanted a house. So now I can't, the threat of not having a house is it's not actual anymore, right? So I can process
Right.
that. That's not mine. Or maybe I'm processing what my mom had a fear of and it's not even mine, or the epigenetic stuff. And then getting into the process of living your everyday life. This is where a daily practice of learning and getting into the state of awareness of alignment and knowing what that feels like to the point that when you're triggered, it feels odd. Now, this is why this is important. You're walking through life, you go get coffee, all of a sudden you're late. Oh my goodness, I'm stressed out. Now my kid called, now he's got sick, he's got to go home. And then the day starts to pile up. Every time those things pile up, little trigger by little micro trigger, if your normal process is to tighten the shoulders, tighten them more and tighten them more, then by the end of the day, you've carried the stress from the first person who was late while you were getting coffee. Right? Now you're carrying that weight all day long. You can learn to release throughout the day. You can learn to release what is not yours to carry at a minimum by the end of the day, right? By the end of the day, especially before you go to bed, because remember, you're going into theta right before you fall asleep. So you're programmable. Right. You can consciously release what is not yours to carry yourself into the next day. And this matters both in breath and in mental. You want at least 2 channels to connect, to process. And it might bring up emotion. You might cry. You might want to punch something. You might want to go to CrossFit and slam on something, right? But guess what? If you work out and mentally process something at the same time, that CrossFit workout just became twice as effective than if you just did it mindlessly, for example.
Yeah.
Right? So
Yeah.
using those somatic channels are really important. You probably have had moments where like something pissed you off and you processed it.
How much it helped me heal from my divorce. I like show up. There was one time I was on the rower, and I was crying, and this one dude, like my first CrossFit box was owned by a bunch of bro dudes, but they were great. This one dude's like, "What's wrong with you?" And I was like, "Just let me cry today." And he's like, "All right." I just like cried and rode. I cried the whole thing, but I was like, this is what I need to do. It's helping me.
It's cathartic. Absolutely. And you are releasing it. You're not running from it. You're actually physically processing all the stuff you probably held your breath through your marriage.
Well, through my whole life, when you're talking about the tenseness, I realized like as a kid, I remember so many people are like, you need to just relax. And I'm like, what do you mean? I'm fine. I'm totally relaxed.
And here's the thing. Co-regulate, like we're not born learning how to do this, right? And we learn from the adults around us. But if the adults around us don't have very good coping skills, then we pick them up and we take them. And there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with sucking it up, kid, right? Until you don't know how to let it out. And so,
yes,
right? So knowing your patterns, like some people will carry it in their shoulders. Some people will literally hold their breath. I know who's holding their breath, because if I ask, and there's a whole assessment of your breath that I can kind of tell how you carry stuff just by watching you breathe. I can tell how energy is moving through you or not moving through you. And from there, you just notice your patterns of preference, right? And then we just try to create new somatic channel awareness, like new awareness for how you can process things. And the breath is like the core of it all. because it connects your brain, it connects everything. Breath is fluid for energy to move. Then we look at, okay, maybe I only have 2 buttons on my remote. It's tense my stomach and scream and punch. Those are my 2 buttons. When actually, so it's kind of like a Kindle remote, right? But the
Right.
truth is, we actually have a whole cable remote for everybody who's over the age of maybe 20. You have a lot of buttons. You have a lot of options.
And there might even be 2 remotes with
There
a
might
lot of
even be 2
buttons.
remotes. Absolutely. And so then you're like, wait a minute, I have so many options for processing that I don't need to carry anything. I can live more in the moment. Now, look, there's a really important point here, which is it is normal to be immersed in your life and to not be constantly thinking of every breath and every thought. That's what life is. We're here to immerse ourselves in the automatic processing. But being aware of what's normal for you, like when I say this, what's in alignment and what's not in alignment, right? Can you imagine what this world would be like if we could reduce the amount of stress people were feeling from 12 hours a day to 6?
My gosh. But okay, yes, I know.
The whole world would be different. And it
If
sounds
we
like such a
could
small little thing. We could just change the world, right? It'd be a better place just so you and me. And so,
matriarchy, this is my
yes,
new obsession.
yes. But we all are contributing to carrying beyond the moment, right? And so
Yeah,
this
yeah.
is, but most of us don't even know what alignment feels like. So first we get into alignment.
No. Yeah. Well, okay, I just wanna sit there for a second because you talked before and I wanted to kinda come back to this too, and this really hits. When you were talking about it took till your 40s to for you to really understand what you actually wanted, and, I know I'm feeling that now. It's part of why I have my gap year because 'cause I'm like, I
I
don't
love
know,
it,
I've
by the
been
way.
surviving. So I'm like, what do I actually want? And like every woman I speak to in the early 40s, it's like, wait a second, I've been doing everything for everybody else. And so when you're talking here about first you find the alignment, I feel like this is such a huge part because there's probably so many people listening, like, well, I don't even know what I want. So how do I know what's aligned? Like, where do I even start? And it
So
sounds
yeah, letting
like
go of what's
really
not yours first.
okay, that's huge.
Hmm.
Yeah.
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 So what's influencing you that you already know you don't like?
And okay, sorry, I'm just
That's
unpacking with
okay.
you.
No, it's
And
okay. That's okay. Unpack.
um, because I think about like the epigenetics, everything we've talked about, where in my life, I got married so young, became a mom, stay-at-home mom, all this because I really felt this pressure, like I needed to be a good mom. And there was a lot of reasons for that, but then I look back and I'm like, well, I feel like the main message I got was that my only true way of surviving was to be a wife. Like money comes from husbands and men.
Yes. And that is a belief and a structure that existed for generations and generations. And ours is
Yes.
really the first, I mean, yes, our parents too. So we're both in our 40s. So like our parents are really the first generation that it was possible because they got checks in their own checking accounts, right?
Mhm.
But then ours was kind of like winging it,
Well, yeah. Well, and
right?
in my family, it was really cool because my dad made enough to take care of us. And then he's a pilot and a mechanic, and so he would do other jobs on people's airplanes and he would make extra money and that's how he would fund his personal projects for his own airplane and stuff. And then my mom would get jobs and she would save the money and that's how she bought our house. She moved us to a nicer neighborhood and had a really fat down payment because she saved her money for a year. She took us on vacations with that money. And then she started working, and that's how they built up their retirement so much. Like she put basically all of it in there. And so it was great to see how that worked. But my mom never had to do everything by herself. Like her money was helpful to everybody. And I look at just everybody else in my family, and it's like I'm the only single mom in like the whole family I can think of. So nobody knows what to do with me. And like I remember one time talking to my parents because it was hard. I could never figure out how to have a career and be a single mom. And like it was just a lot. And I was talking to them. I was really sad. Anyway, I remember my dad was like, well, it's kind of like we're your husband. Like we've got to help you financially. And that just always stuck with me because I'm like, that's not what I want. Like I want to be able to do this, like, I want the support. I want y'all to be like, "Let's help you get to who you are so you can stand on your own 2 feet," instead of like,
Yeah.
"Oh, you don't have a husband, so of course you can't survive."
Mm,
And it kind of reinforced that. Like, that's when it clicked
that's
when
an
I was
old
like,
story. Yeah.
"My gosh," like, that's a huge part I know of my money, and it's like money comes from husbands, and I don't have one of those, so I don't get money either.
Mm.
Yeah.
But you have an environment that shows you different. So that's one. That's one benefit advantage that you
Yeah.
have over your mom, for example, because she was raising kids in an environment where it's pretty rare, right? That would
Right.
happen. And so you know it's possible. And so I would explore next, what does that mean in terms of like, what does it mean to you that you don't have the husband and the money, let's say, right? Or maybe you do have one or the other. So there's going to be some stories around that too, right? Because, okay, money
Yeah.
is safety for some people. Money is opportunity for others. It's value to other people, right? So it depends like, what does money mean to you? Because it's literally energy, right? It's literally an
Right.
expansion of who you are. So by not having it, does it tell you something? And the truth is, and then you come back to it and say, wait a minute, regardless of I have money, I have this, I am what, right? And then as that begins to flow, that shifts for a lot of people. The money comes once you step into the different belief. And so it's not looking, I'm not saying that you're doing this. This one potential could be looking at your parents' perception of you. Is it more true or less true than your own?
That's true. I feel like they don't. Yeah.
Okay. So, and for some people, it'd be like, no, I won't be able to believe this in myself until my parents support me. And that's fine. I mean, whatever that is for you, you know the truth. And so, as you would breathe into this, here's the thing. As you breathe into the belly and open and expand your chest, the emotional centers open. It's creating a posture of receiving whatever the truth is. As you exhale, you're dropping and releasing. So, the entire process of a long session is opening that process of letting go of what's not mine and standing in posture of what is. And so I can tell you that I can host the same session 100,000 times and it will be different every single time. But what you see and experience in that session, what I'm containing, what I'm creating and containing is safety, acceptance, compassion, like whatever comes, comes. I got you. Like you can totally put your beer and purse down. I got you. Which half the people I deal with are huge givers. And half the problem is stopping the compulsion to fix, to make
Yes.
sure
Yes.
the door's locked and I got it covered. So half of it is, look, I'm just like you. Don't worry, I got you covered.
Yeah.
You can actually go on vacation right now, right? And when you come back, you won't have to fix anything that you didn't do for the last 2 weeks. Like, I've got you. It's like having that kind of person, right? Like, I know that one friend that could come watch your kids that you know you wouldn't come home and have to do dishes and then like do all the stuff to make up for you not being there.
Yeah.
That's half my job, and I got you. And then as you breathe and you can explore, like I happen to believe myself that I know I'm setting a container both spiritually and emotionally and physically. I'm holding resonance. I'm holding groundedness, right? My heart rate, I'm going to co-regulate what your parents probably couldn't
Mm.
when you were little. My heart is not going to raise because you're crying. I don't care if you swear. I don't care if you punch me. I got you, right? I played rugby as a cheerleader and I went to CrossFit. You can punch me. I can take a punch. Please don't, but but I can if I need to. What I'm saying is I don't take insult. I've had a person that I had an intuitive to come and put my hand, because I ask for consent for hands on touch and for energy work. But I put my hand on her shoulder and she whacked me off. And later I thought, well, why did you? I really felt pushed to go and do that. Like it was a really weird intuitive hit. And I said, I'm really sorry. I actually think that was strange. And she said, you know what? No, it was perfect. I have never said no and people listened. And
What?
you gave me an experience where I did that and you walked and you didn't come back. And I thought, okay. She goes, but I also heard in your voice as you guided me that you were totally supportive. Like I didn't hurt you. I didn't upset you. I didn't insult you. And so that's the work
Yeah.
I'm doing, that I'm guiding you through. And
Okay.
then,
And those
yeah,
restorative experiences are so important.
yes,
Like even one
they
little
really are.
experience like that.
But there's no way for me to really know that, right? Like I have to have the kind of trust in the process, and I do because of the way I set the container. And then I always spend time ahead of time to explain what you're about to experience. There's a lot of really good breathwork practitioners that make sure they set the expectations, but I've also been to sessions where they aren't. And so I make sure that you know exactly what's possible, what's normal, what's safe, and that there's so little that could potentially happen. I mean, short of being pregnant and the birth coming on, there's very, very little that you can always guide in a way that's safe. So, but I make sure people know and that I know your medical condition so that I can guide you safely. And so then we go through it. And then once all of the safety, all that stuff is done, the experience is so beautifully intuitive. I know the container is you healing yourself. You're having an experience where you walk through a tiny little fire or a big fire, whatever you need in that moment, and the highest good is what's going to happen. And it is not big or small based on the size of the fire. Like it can be profound to have a small tear shed over something.
Yeah.
Profound. Or it can be profound that you breathed into dysregulation and learned how to come back out of dysregulation. Like that little key could be all you needed to know that you got this in life. And the more you experience that level of alignment, the more you do that, even in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, after the first couple sessions, the homework is to do this, to feel, to learn what titration is, to learn what oscillation between fight or flight or freeze or expansion. Once you understand all those buttons on your remotes, then you become the magician of your own life, the creator of your own life. And you can say, I've never jumped out of a plane. I bet I could do that. And then if you want to, you do, right?
Yeah.
But that's you. You got to be the one that wants to jump out of the plane, not me. I'm not telling you how to live your life. You live your life.
Yeah.
And it's kind of crazy what comes through intuitively when all of everybody else's expectations, rules, beliefs are no longer carried in your heart.
Oh my gosh, yes. I mean, I
It's
had to move
like,
halfway across the country to get into that state, but
and that's a really important point that you make. Because if you're in an environment that isn't safe, that is oppressive, that is one that inhibits your ability to have the belief that the outside world can hold the new you, I humbly ask you to work on that first. I would never have someone work, for example, on a violent situation, for example, while in that environment. You cannot shift what's inside of you unless you're in a place where you can walk out of that environment that's holding you, right? And so that's a major, major component. And so that means whatever needs to happen for you to be in a safe place, that's the priority first, because safety is the doorway in this. Like I say to people all the time, this is not a very empowering experience if you feel like I've got a fork at your back. You are
right.
at the wheel of every single one of my experiences. This is your life. This is your breath. I'm just here holding your hand so that you're not doing it alone.
Okay, and this brings up something that I've really noticed inside of successful people, and I say success in quotes because success means a lot of things.
Yeah, sure,
But
sure.
I realized that in order to have the capacity to grow and to expand and to do what you need to do and to be more self expressed and to be successful, you have to have some kind of container holding you. And that usually comes in some form of really great relationship. A lot of women have said they have amazing husbands who are like, do what you need to do, I've got you. And that just helps them grow, or they have a best friend. But it sounds like even if you don't have that, it's like come to Nicole or someone like what doing what you do to hold that space. And that's what I always see whenever you talk about it. It's like you are that container inside of that time together to really allow the person to feel what they need to feel and to have the expression and to do what they need to do. But it, like you said, it's really hard to do if you're in a space where you're not feeling held and supported.
Percent. Yeah. If you're So you got to find your people. You've got to find the people. And this is, I struggle with this for a long time too, because after my husband passed, I thought, like, if that's not the container I'm being held in anymore, like, then what's the point of relationships? If I'm supposed to be whole before I need, like, I'm not supposed to be looking outside for validation, because that was the lesson I was really processing. Well, then what's the point of even having one, right? Like, is it just nice to have? Like, I don't understand. I really question this. And I have a partner, and I was like, listen, this is what I'm exploring right now. Like, what are you here for?
Right.
If I'm not supposed to be looking to you to fill my cup, then what is the point? And I had a mentor that said this so beautifully. And he said, our closest relationships are there as mirrors to show us where we've grown and where the work still is. However, this is your journey. So yes, you keep working to become whole, to be who you are. And like they say, if you think you're healed, go home for Thanksgiving, right? Like those relationships will always unearth and show you where there's still work, because those are the places where you become vulnerable, right? Now, a good friend is the same. They're here to remind you who you are when you forget,
Yes.
and in a positive way. They don't need to remind you that you were a certain way in middle school. I mean, in the positive way, right? And so it's your job to be whole and to do the best to care for yourself. No, there's certain things in life that no coach, no therapist, no doctor can do but you. You are walking this journey. However, and I can easily be said that I'm hyper independent. So I will say,
Same.
however, we will all have moments where we need to be reminded who the heck we are. And that's what your people are there for. There's absolutely, like, I can't breathe for you. You got to do the breathing, right? That's yours. If you can't get yourself, and we can speak to this from an emotional level and from a physiological level. Remember how I said in love and fear, those are two ways you get into programmable state. And look, it's hard for us to win something every day, right? To get into that love creative state, you have to kind of achieve something. However, it's really easy to physically manipulate vulnerability with breath, right? And so you get into that state with empowerment. You push yourself to a limit. You push yourself to get to a space where you're a little bit uncomfortable with, oh man, can I go faster? Can I go harder? And when you're in that place of programmability, that's how you can test. But as you're there over time, There are certain degrees to which you don't need anybody to say, you got this, right? But every once in a while, you need someone there. It really helps to be like, come on, you know you got this. Don't even take a
Yes.
minute, right, to cry or to look back. Keep going. You got this. Now, both of those, the ability to do that yourself, and also when it really calls for it, to have people in your community that remind you that you got this, it's really important because we both have to, like, life is getting into the forest. Life is looking and exploring the forest. And having someone up there to be like, nope, keep going left, keep going left. No, listen, I promise you, you're so close, is really important, right? But only you can get in the forest. And it makes sense that you're going to immerse and you're going to lose perspective. And that is the whole point, is to test your boundaries. It's the whole point, to find yourself in positions where you're not so sure anymore. To have that emotional response is to be in a body. And that's how you learn lessons viscerally. It is the difference between watching a movie and reading a book and living it yourself. You can have ideas of how you think you'd react in that situation. You can empathize. But the truth is, when your face is in the dirt and it's pitch black, only you can decide to look toward the light.
True.
And you
True.
only know what you're going to do when you're in that position.
I will say it's interesting. Something I've really observed is that when you do read the book or watch a movie, and it can kind of give you that experience. Obviously not like a full experience, but you can have the kind of secondary experience, and it can maybe even give you the courage to take the steps for yourself so that you can
100%.
get in there, whatever it sparks in you to say, like, I don't know, I just had an experience with this recently with a TV show, and now it's like sparked all kinds of stuff in me. And I'm like, this
Mm.
is wild.
If I can say, it's what podcasts and what all of what we used to look to, like produced movies, right? But also now people being able to share their stories, we can learn vicariously through them. And so I would say
Shit, that's why
this.
I started this podcast.
Exactly. Exactly. It gives you hope. Seeing the work gives you
Mhm.
hope. So I would say this: if there's even a single person that's ever listening to this podcast who isn't sure whether their story is worth it or whether they should shine their light, I would ask you to wonder who's going to live from your story if nobody ever hears it. And you don't have to. That's up to you if you want to keep it to yourself, of course. But there's certainly value in each of us living our life to the fullest, right? And actually exploring what it's like to be in the forest. Because if nobody goes in, then nobody learns from each other. And it would be a lot of people stuck in the
Right.
forest.
Right? Yeah.
But yeah, there is hope in that. And if there's ever a time, I can honestly say, and it's funny, there's a small part of me is like, Nicole, don't say this because then the next big thing's going to come. Look, in 9/11, I was just out of college and I was living in New York and I was there for all that. And I remember distinctly thinking, man, that was the biggest event of my whole life. And now I chuckle because I met my husband after that. And then we moved around as a military spouse and then COVID and all of this. And it's like, man, if I knew then what I know now, I would have laughed at myself then, right? But
Right.
but every step of the way, I was able to because of what I accomplished before,
Yeah, for sure.
for how I was able to believe in myself and move forward. And I will say this as well as about people's pains or obstacles, and do they have to? No, nobody has to go through something really difficult in life. Nobody is contracted to have a miserable life. I don't believe that's true. It
Yeah,
does
I don't either.
happen. But I also think, this is something that I encountered a couple of times going through like widowhood and people saying, people having a hard time when someone else says something. This might be controversial, but I'm going to bring it up anyway. Someone else would say, I feel so sorry for your loss. My dog died. And then someone else will say, how dare they compare this to that, right? And people will get really upset about it. And I thought about it because my kids sometimes would also struggle with that, with kids. Like they'd struggle with kids' lives and their problems not being a big deal. And like, how do they think this is a big deal? I dealt with this. And this
Right.
is what I will say. Look, pain is pain, and our perception of pain is directly related to how much pain we've already gone through. And so
Yeah.
someone losing the dog that may have stopped them from killing themselves, you have no idea what that relationship meant to them. You have no idea their capacity for what they can handle. And all they're really trying to do is connect with you and say they have empathy and they have felt pain of loss. The value of that loss and what it teaches someone is not up to you. And I wanted to get to a place where people could say whatever they wanted about my loss and it not be something I had to even respond. I could honor their loss, honor their experience for what it is, and to know that regardless of some perception of whether it was big T or little t, or what that was, whatever your pain is, whatever your tiger is, it's yours, and it is the size it is because of your life experience to date. And I will say that, yes, I do feel pretty confident I can handle most things, but there are definitely things that I don't understand, but I don't need to. All I need to know is that I love you soul to soul, and that when it's time for you to look at your tiger, I'm going to be right here with you so that you can say, not today. Today, I'm going to walk alongside it instead of run. But it's up to you when that day comes.
It. And that's what I love about the work you do too. It is so empowering. Like you are holding the space for the person to grow and to expand and develop. Oh my gosh, so much amazingness and so many deep thoughts. I feel like there's going to be a lot of rewinding and re-listening to things.
Maybe a little editing. Maybe a little editing. We kind of went on the exploratory route around the map and back again.
But I love
But
it. Like,
that wouldn't be my life. It wouldn't be me if it wasn't that way.
yeah. Yeah. And I just always trust that what needs to be shared is what is shared. And so I think it's beautiful.
Well, if
Okay.
anybody ever wanted to know what it was like to be inside of an ADHD brain, you just got a full.
Well, and I'm
a full
right there with you. Oh, we got two of us just ping ponging everywhere. Okay, so I want to go ahead and wrap up, but I'm curious to hear what is your definition of success now? I know I just want to reflect again, like you kind of talked before about having a lot of money was success and having a big house was success. But right now, what is success to you?
Success to me now is knowing who I am and knowing that no matter what life throws at me, I'm going to know exactly what the next step is. I have a process for staying connected to that. And I know that sounds really loose and it could be more definitive, but for me, in terms of like physical, like for tangible goals, it's leaning into the areas that cause fear and knowing that they are tiny little kitty cats. Like every time I turn something that's a big fear into something I can handle, I feel incredibly fulfilled. And that's what keeps giving me hope that no matter what is thrown our way, that we can go through it together, and really
Yes,
together.
the together is a huge aspect for sure. Okay, and thank you for sharing that because I think that is such a beautiful definition of success. And last question. This is called the Full Heart Podcast, as you know, because I'm on a mission to spread more love. And so, what is filling your heart these days? Like, what brings you joy and love in your life?
Well, I have two beautiful dogs that absolutely bring me joy. Obviously, I should have said my kids first, but they'll understand because they feel the same way about the dogs. No, truly, my son is about to graduate from high school and my daughter is in middle school, and watching them deal with normal everyday kid stuff and not the mega of losing their dad, like they are truly blossoming into exactly who they are.
Beautiful.
To me is absolutely like it just fills me up. My son was just one of the leads in the musical, and like seeing him shine on stage, and she as well, my daughter as well, like seeing them go through life and seeing that yeah, just like the conversations. I have the coolest kids. They're the coolest people to talk to.
Oh my gosh,
They're
yes.
filling my heart. And then honestly, this work, I think I heard you say that like things in life tend to prepare me for this work. Like I'll be going through something and then someone will come to me. There's this like beautiful synchronicity in service.
Love it. It
And
happens all the time.
yeah, and it's the way the universe sprinkles little like I see you, I'm winking at you. Like that to
Mhm.
me, I absolutely love when I'm in a session and I'll have an intuition or a sight or I'll see a picture of something and they'll be like, I saw the dragon too. Like that stuff absolutely lights me up because it's intuitive synchronicity is I love it. I love when, someone's like, I was just thinking of you. That's funny. I was just thinking of like all of that stuff. I absolutely love it. So I'm
Yes.
super into podcasts and shows about exploring what we know intuitively, well what many of us know intuitively, being proven by science. Like that is, I will geek out over that all day long. I've even considered getting a doctorate and studying what happens in the mind and the brain during breathwork sessions. Like I would absolutely love that. So if anyone knows of a study I can work on, just let me know,
That would be
because I would
amazing.
geek out on that stuff all day long. Yeah,
Yeah. Would you
absolutely.
do, like, a neuroscience thing and have that be your thing?
That's one of the great ways we can determine, certainly, but I've also and I have to look into the efficacy of this, but I love aura photography and seeing how there's a wonderful woman that does this in a lot of our local stuff, and she will take pictures, but it's real time while till she snapshots, and she gave me the best gift. I was at a place and I was doing 10-minute sessions with people of energy, and and breath and sacred geometry. And she was this woman who was pretty stressed out, and she said, "You need to go see Nicole." Earlier that day, I did my own aura photographer because I have like one for every time I see her. It's kind of like a button, like it's like a button for a conference. I go see her every time and
Yeah.
see how it's progressed over the last 5 years. It's really shifted and changed. And what was crazy is she went back and took it, and it completely shifted from so many reds and densities and difficulties and the stress into the same colors mine was that same day,
Wow.
which were like purples and whites and light blues and like an airiness, even some of the same imagery. And so she printed a second copy and brought them over to me so I could see the before and after. And I thought, this is so cool. So yes, neurobiology for sure, but there's also something in that too, which is why I have a lot of fun playing with other folks in this community because, we all receive intuitive messages differently. And I 100% now feel like my belief is spirit, soul, God, higher power, quantum physics, however you want to call it. It speaks to us in the ways I call it soul charades. And
Okay.
it gives us what we think we're going to guess, what they think we're going to guess. And we shared this a little bit about before, like if a cardinal means something to me, but it means something to you, it's going to, what resonates with you matters more than any guide, guru, person. You're on this journey living your life, and how something makes you feel is the most important about a message that resonates. That's why people will say, take what resonates, leave what doesn't, right?
For
Because
sure.
your
Yeah.
body lights up what matters. And so if we
Yes.
can clear out what's not ours, the cross signals, then we can hear and feel and know those intuitive hits and have a little bit more power. My company name is Wild Heart, which I think is really
Beautiful.
cool. Wild
Full
Heart.
heart
Yeah.
and
Yes, I know. I
wild
was
heart.
laughing. And so having that sovereignty, that freedom to be exactly who you are, to be seen, to be known, like that's my goal, is to create containers where people can be accepted for exactly who they are. And so it's Wild Heart Compass because apparently wildheart.com has been probably got sold in 2001. So Wild Heart Compass because ultimately the breath helps you find your compass.
Beautiful. Okay, tell us a little more, or just tell us like what offerings you have. So if people are
Mhm.
curious, they want to work with you and how they can
Sure.
find you.
Sure. So wildheartcompass.com is my website. I've at Wild Heart Compass for all of my social media. But I work online as well as locally in New England. I support retreats. I've been to Egypt, I've been to Bali, I've supported people in retreats doing their somatic work as part of their processes, including activations and pyramids and all that fun, cool stuff.
Thanks.
But in terms of if someone is not local to me and they're not traveling to one of those places, I do online sessions as well. I offer both full transformational breathwork sessions online in group and private, but I also have something that I'm launching is finding that alignment. So it's a 10 to 15-minute experience where you breathe into your alignment each day. So getting into that compass, finding that space. I call it sovereign anchor. And it's anchoring into your truth. And it's going to expand into even more, like exploring other frequencies, like empowerment, like truth, like clarity. And it combines not just breath, but sacred geometry and using it as an energy modality. And so in truth, it naturally came together as I studied sacred geometry because breath is sacred geometry, things like spirals and spheres and using the breath to move and find perspective. And so I combine them so that people can connect and find heart-mind coherence, especially minds that are super busy and
Yeah.
bodies that are super anxious. Because look, if you've ever said, I can't meditate, that's not for me, this is for the neurospicy, it's for the hypervigilant, it's for people who really have a hard time finding meditation. And so it's going to be available very soon to be able to download online. So I'm super
Awesome.
excited about putting that out into the world.
That sounds like an amazing tool.
Thanks. I'm excited by it. And of course, I would be happy to have you come try our session for free and just come anytime.
Okay.
I would love to have you come be a part of it for sure.
I'll be there in 20 minutes.
We should do another podcast after you experience it so that you can explain it. Because
It
it is
would be
hard to
so
explain what we
cool.
do. It's hard to explain what we
Yeah.
do. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. We'll chat. We'll chat.
Okay, cool.
Thank you
Awesome.
so much, Nicole. I
It's been really nice
appreciate
to
you.
see you. Thank you for all the times you've held space for me. It's been wonderful, wonderful having you
Absolutely.
in my circle.
Yes, I'm grateful. It's been fun watching you grow.
You too.
Thank you so much.
You too.